All right. Oh, that's pretty loud. That's way too loud. How's that? Seems about right. Okay. There you go. There's my lovely voice. You can listen to it as I talk right now. Hello, YouTube. Okay. So let's first get the startup. Let's create everything that we want to have going. So where's my startup import? Let's get that on there. Yeah, you can watch me too if you'd like. Hey, here we go. Good times. Okay, so our startup's created. Scenes. Let's get that gone first. And in here, I'm going to get rid of the camera and then save the core scenes. Okay. So here's my core scene. That's created. That's working. I'm going to magically pull a script out of midair when I'm doing this, by the way, and I'm going to actually do it right now as we speak to get that over with. And we'll quickly review it. This is definitely not mine. I'll tell you that much. And if you want to Google it, you're more than welcome to find this guy. System core scene field scripts. Let's create a couple folders in here. So that they can see it in the back. Yeah. Okay, scene field. We'll review that maybe later on. This is something that I grabbed from I don't remember where, but it allows me to reference a scene, actual Unity scene inside the inspector itself, okay? Which is a nice feature for us to use when we want to be loading everything. So here's our core. Core is created. I'm going to create a new scene. I'm going to drag out all of these guys here. I'm going to save that as the UI. Okay? So now I've got my core, I've got my UI, and then we'll just quickly create one more, and that one's going to be called the level. This is going to be just a low-level kind of working solution if you have one file to load. If you have multiple level files to load, you're going to have to adjust your scene loader to work properly, okay? You'll have to probably just make another intermediate level loader that will work for you, okay? Now, let's go back into core first thing. The core, basically, what I always put inside of my core are a few things. One of them is going to be a new game object. I'm going to create an empty one. I'm going to call it the system. And then we're going to create a UI canvas. And that's not supposed to be there. There we go. Canvas. And the canvas itself would be a screen space overlay, which is perfect. I'm going to just quickly do my preferred 1920 by 1080. And then what I'm going to do is on my screen, just kind of quickly setting up something here really fast. Let's go to 16 by 9. That's my game. I don't want the game there. I want that there. Okay. And on the canvas, I'm going to add a panel. All right. There's my lovely loading screen. Looks good? Yes? We could enhance this a bit more. Oh, I didn't. Let's just put that in there. Okay. I think that should be enough for that. So then if I go into my canvas and let's add, we should not worry too much about it, but I'm going to add it anyways. A UI image that has this and uses that. drop this in the bottom right corner. We'll dock that over to the side there, and we'll change this so that we can see it. All right, so if this plays, this guy should rotate now on the bottom right here. Okay, so there's our loading screen. Okay, so this is very simple, very straightforward, and there's nothing fancy to this really, right? It's an animator that takes this sprite and just rotates it 360 degrees around and then just loops it. That's all that's doing. Okay, so just so that you understand YouTube what's going on. All right, that's enough of that jokingly. Okay, so here's the canvas, and this is my loading canvas. And we'll come back to this guy. Hopefully the reason why I put him in there is I wanted to show that the loading canvas is, I've considered part of the core. It's not actually part of the UI. Okay, and there's a reason behind that, is because the loading canvas should always be there, especially when the game boots up. Now you could do a couple other things too as well. You could incorporate, okay, not a loading canvas in there. I could also put in my startup boot sequence. I want to show my logo, who it's developed by, all of those other little fun things that you want to add in there. Those also would go here too as well, right? It's the very first thing that you're going to boot into. So we'll kind of get that guy running right here, which is, he's good enough as it is. And I'm just going to disable him for now, and we'll come back to him hopefully another time. The next object that I want to create is called my startup. Okay, now this is where we're going to start getting into the code writing. Startup is basically the guy that determines what am I going to do and how am I going to boot up into the game. And he's here for a specific reason, and the purpose of startup is to determine, am I already in the game or am I booting from the beginning of the game, right? Because if you're thinking about the development, right, when I'm programming, I don't want to have to go through the main menu every time. I don't want to have to say, okay, go to the game, boot the load menu, deal with some loading, boot the level, deal with some loading. You want to get there as fast as you can, all right? And that's what my startup sequence, the purpose of it is trying to do. So that means that you should be able to do something like this. By default, I always need to have my core, okay? And then I could say, well, instead of core, I could also say I want to have core and UI. I want to boot right up into the game UI, skip all the other things. Okay, so that's what we could do there. And then the third option is to say that I want to be able to boot right into a level and just start playing. Right? I want to bypass all of that other stuff and that garbage. I just want to get right to the level. So that's what that's supposed to do. So let's just remove everything and say we want to start right from the beginning, and that's where we're going to start writing some code. Start. All right, quick cleanup on this. All right. And start. I don't need update. All right. First things first, we want to get the actual scene to load. What scene do we want to load, right? So I've created that scene field, the object that I have there, or that script that I just dropped in earlier on. I'll quickly just review it with you guys once we're done. But understanding that allows me to link a scene that is as an asset inside of here. It basically stores it as a string when we're at runtime. That's all it's really doing. Okay, but when we're in Unity, it allows us to kind of do the proper references. So this is a scene field object, and this is my startup scene. And that's the scene that I want us to load first. Okay, so when I boot up the game, it's going to go from here to here, right? And that's basically always the UI technically. You could call it the UI scene if you'd like, but it's limiting. You're saying that my UI is the next scene that I'm always going to load. Maybe you have core loads, and then the startup boots up, which is going to be the your loading sequence of, like, you know, here's my starting cinematic or whatever it may be. So we're not kind of limiting ourselves like that to that level there. Now, inside of the start, we're going to basically, so let's create our function first that we're going to use. This is an IEnumerable. Is it? Oh, no, I don't have it that way. Okay, so set up startup scenes. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask the scene, find the scene, which is located in the scene management. So get scene by name, and then we can use our startup scene. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to start the sequence by first finding the startup scene to say, I need to get it. Your scenes also, by the way, make sure they're part of the build settings, right? Because if they're not part of the build settings, you'll never find them. You guys are all aware of that, though, I'm pretty sure. Right? Next question is, let's say if the scene is loaded, right? So I want to know, is the scene already loaded or not? And if that is equal to false, and the, I'm just going to leave that one as is. So if it is not loaded, then we need to start loading. So we're going to do a coroutine here in a second. Otherwise, we're going to do something else, another coroutine here, okay? So we're going to kick off 2 coroutines to determine how to solve our problem. This side here says that we already, I don't even have to put this in, I'm talking, this is going to be on video, so what do I, this one basically says that we already have the UI scene loaded, so we're going to either determine what we should do from here, meaning, do we have another scene loaded? And if we do, then we need to tear down the menus, the main menu manager, right? So that we can basically boot right into the level, or just leave the menu manager open and pretend that we did a little bit of loading, right? And then show the menu manager, the main menus, okay? The first one here basically says that you're starting right from the beginning. It's like you double-clicked the exe and you booted up the game, right? Or you hit launch on your iPad and it's going to start playing. That's the one that we're going to focus on first to start to get us to load into the UI scene itself. Okay, so that's going to jump in there. The one thing that we don't touch a lot here, and I don't touch much inside of this, is the menu manager itself. I don't even have a menu manager part of my scene right now, and that could be a problem. We might have to drag my old menu manager in and get that to work for us. So let's get some coroutine functions going. So an enumerator. Load startup scene. So we want to do the loading of a startup scene, and then another one for I kind of called this, I think it's bad. I'm going to leave it as I called it just for now, and it's a stall, and you'll see why the stall is there. It's kind of just, there's a few purposes behind this. Alright, so then the first time we're going to do, load the startup scene. So the first thing we're going to do is get this guy to load, and again, we're going to first say the, I have a, up here, I've created this, forgot this guy. Async operation. This guy's just going to be allows us to reuse this property over and over again. So async loader, we're going to first then say I want to load the scene, the UI scene, right? Because this basically states that the UI scene is not, or startup scene, sorry, I shouldn't say UI, but it is UI generally. Startup scene is not loaded, so let's get this guy loading. So we're going to say that the scene manager loads scene asynchronously, and then we're going to supply it the startup scene. And remember, that's just a string in code terminology, so that we can just send that straight off, and then we're going to say load it additively. All right, so that just loads that on top of it, and this is a while my async loader, while it's not done, yield wait a frame. Okay, just wait. That's all we're going to do. And I'm going to be writing all these guys as one-liners. I'm not going to be bracing them in and out, okay? Because I really hate doing it to these guys specifically. scene, and we're just going to say that we've loaded the scene. Yay, we're good to go. Now, no, it's a asynchronous loading. As you're an enumerator, this is basically a yield return. It's basically saying, come back to me later on the next frame. Okay. Now, again, this is just, it's weird how some things are done, and sometimes you wait, right, for no purpose, okay? Because things load fast sometimes, right, depending on the devices. And I always say this, when you're doing a transition, like a fade in and out, about a half a second, something, you know, find a standard that you're happy with, but not something that's too jarring to the user, right? So this scene is going to load really, really fast. So therefore, we're going to do a yield return new, wait for 2 seconds. I think that's right. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. We're just going to wait a little bit. Okay, and that's all we're doing here. And then a few comments to add into this part right here is that the we want to hide the loading canvas and then show the main menu canvas. Now, remember, a lot of our UI are menus that we're working with, and we saw that menu manager before in a previous class. We'd be able to get the menu manager and then ask for it, excuse me, ask for it to show or hide, whatever it may be. The loading as well too. They're all registered inside the menu manager. Here's the thing though, we loaded the UI. This is technically the UI. We're gonna have that menu manager. This is not always required because you could be doing something else, right? I'm just pointing out what I would have done in my instance right here. I would definitely be hiding, excuse me, hiding the loading canvas at this point in time because it should be shown while we're loading at the startup, okay? So that's one thing that we definitely would want to hide. And I could kind of trick this if I wanted to. So we may come back to that. Let's do this. Start coroutine. And the coroutine is going to just take the load startup scene as the, that's it, okay? So now we're gonna get that loading. That's only gonna happen if that scene isn't loaded. Again, there are important things to recognize when you're doing it. You must have some specifics, and that is, for our game to run properly, we always need to start at the core. For our game to run in sequence, it needs to go from core to the next file and then into the game, basically, okay? So if you're gonna manipulate this to have a cinematic sequence scene in between, you're gonna need to figure out how to integrate that in between the two, okay? Because this is generally, this startup scene is generally the UI scene in my case. Now the stall is here for us to say that I already have the startup scene loaded, right? That exists and that is inside of memory. Again, generally UI, or I could have something else loaded. I could have a third scene, and that could be my level, meaning I want to go directly into the game. I don't want to wait, all right? So in that case, all we're going to do is a few things right here, and it's very, not trickery, but if the scene manager, what is it, the scene count? It's pretty much hard-coding the exact specifics into this, right? So if we're this, then I'm going to then hide loading screen, or loading canvas. Okay, that's all I'm really going to do at this point. And the scene is already there, and all we're asking to say, get rid of the loading canvas. We're done. Okay. Otherwise, this states that there are more than 2 scenes loaded now, because the first one basically just says, is my startup scene loaded, right? Again, there are some assumptions have to be made. First one says, is this loading screen loaded? No, the startup's not loaded, so therefore we got to do a whole boot sequence. That's what's going to happen in the regular gameplay. This is the boot sequence to the game, right? This is the boot sequence to the, I'm in the editor, I want to play from the editor mode, okay? So the stall will basically then say, okay, we'll hide the loading. In this case here, we're going to say hide loading canvas. And then we're also going to state that we're going to hide any other menus we don't want and show game HUD. Okay? So there's a little bit of very specific implementation there for what's going to happen, because we're saying that we need to get rid of all the main menu stuff, hide all of that, show us the game HUD if we have one, right? You may not have one, so therefore you don't need it, right? And that's why this is a very little bit of a custom specific to your game, what you're going to be doing, okay? And then you'll notice I've got this in an enumerator, or this coroutine method that I want to do. And why, you ask? Well, because I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Did you have to pass in how long you want to wait for?
We could. Yeah, we could. But I'm putting in this as a general. Yeah, you could definitely make it more robust, absolutely. Okay. But I think 2 seconds is a general enough time overall, just from implementing a lot of little mobile crappy games from the past and doing some of the bigger games as well too. I've found 2 seconds just a nice, easy for the eyes, right? Always modifiable and adjustable though, right? So 5, totally. And then up here, we're just going to go start the coroutine, and that was our stall the startup scene. Okay. And now finally in here, I don't know why I did this, and that's why it's always great to rewrite the code, is that there is no point in having this function, is there? I just do it all in the startup. So there we go. I'll fix that. I should have a pen to mark that in my notes. Okay. So here we go. This is basically our startup sequence is going to determine how to load into our game. All right. Let's do a quick test. We don't have any menus going. That's okay. And we're going to keep the loading canvas as something that's completely just hidden for now. We could actually link the object in there and just kind of disable and enable it if we wanted to. So startup. Drop that in. So we have no scene as the beginning, so we're going to put the UI in. All right. Actually, I'm gonna just really quickly so we can see this in action. Hopefully, it'll work fine for us. Public game object, and wherever I wanted to hide that, I'm just gonna do that, that. And that, okay? So I'm just gonna basically just disable it right off the bat. I have like fade in and out scripts and all sorts of other little things that happen on my menus and whatnot, so, and I don't wanna take too much time to dig into a menu manager itself right now. Okay, so there's our canvas. Let's make it turn on, and the startup will take the UI, which is there. So let's see if this runs, and we should get the UI to load and then the loading canvas to go away. So here's our boot sequence, and we got some errors. Oh, yes. Build settings, core, UI, and level. Now go. UI is loaded. There goes the menu, and we're back, and we're right into the main menu right now. All right, that's how you would envision that. Okay. Is there any questions? We're good so far? Okay. So now the next one was I want to boot right into the UI. Right. So that means that if I drag my UI in, right, I want to start my game right from the main menu. There's that fake stall that happens. No loading, and UI is already there. Right. And then the last one was I want to load directly into a level. Okay, so we play the start, it goes, everything's all there. Okay, ignore the errors that are going for now, but it's right into the game, okay? And we tore down the loading, and we probably would have also torn down any main menus that we have and shown any game HUDs that we want to do. So that spot is very specific to get you into the game of where you want to be at, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so it's a very small script actually when you think of it at the end of the day. This guy should... one of these, yeah, let's not worry about that. It's a very small script at the end of the day, but it does its job, and it works really well for you working in multiple scene files, because one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to waste time having to go through the main menu all the time, right? However, this is a word of caution and warning. Go through the main menu often, all right? It helps find bugs. Right? A lot of bugs can happen by just skipping over the menus and just getting myself right into the game. All right, just be aware of that. I've seen that before in the past where it's like, oh, everybody's been focused on getting the game done, right? That they miss the little things of the transitions, and those transitions open up bugs that you all of a sudden you don't realize until it comes down to build day, right? And you're like, oh my God, how does that happen? And then you go back and you find it and you fix it, and then you test and you fix it. And when it comes down to build days, you're very locked down on that. You don't want people checking in and stuff. Okay? So there's our startup sequence. The next one I'm going to do is about a little bit of scene loading, scene manager. So let's take a small break and we'll come back on that one there, okay? And we'll review that. And that one's a little bit more in depth, deals with our loading canvas again. All right, so it's a little bit more on our loading canvas. I think we'll be able to cheat the system again by incorporating that. And I'm going to drag in a few other scripts in here, like my singleton script and all of that stuff, to make sure everything will work at the end of the day. Okay? All right, so let's take about 10 minutes. We'll come back and we'll continue on from there. See if I got any. I didn't get any thumbs up on my stream. Oh, I got 4 people watching. Not bad. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Everybody give me a thumbs up? No.
I give you a thumbs up. Everyone else gave you a thumbs up.
I'm sorry. So you do know that the YouTube stuff, it's actually, I can actually watch it anytime.
Not all of my stuff.
No, I mean everything that you stream,
Yeah.
it's available even when you're not streaming.
Shouldn't be.
It is.
Uh,
That's why I said maybe turn off the mic. I don't know.
okay, so if we go to my video manager, oh, it says it's